Okay, so now if we remember from our video where we talked about add component annotation, I told you that this add component annotation has a lot of annotations which inherit this add component annotation, this add service, add repository, add controller, and so on. And basically what these annotations represents, they have the same functionality as the add component annotation with extra features. And now let's talk about the add service, add repository, and add controller annotation. So for example, if I go to my DAO and instead of add component I use the add repository annotation, which is from the same package, and I start this, it will be the same behavior. What is the difference between the repository and component? If I go here, you can see that this annotation inherits the add component, but what it has an extra feature is the fact that if you have some exception with data access exception and persistent exception, now this is database exceptions, you don't need to understand this fully, it will also be taken into consideration. But in a very simple terms, there isn't any big difference between the add component and add repository annotation. So why would you use the add repository annotation? Well, this will you use on all the classes where you interact directly with the database. So here in our class we don't interact with the database, but we will when we build on our application. But here you specifically tell yourself and other developers that this class is responsible to interact with your model, with your database, with your data, as we have here. Imagine this is like this get person for DB is like a database call, and this you will know based on the add repository. Spring from Spring perspective is the same. Repository and component is the same behavior, but this is for to divide your classes into different functionalities to see and to structure your project based on what your functionalities are. Now the same thing is for service annotation. The service annotation, basically you will do this in your classes, which implements some business logic. So the service classes basically will take the information from a repository from the data and will do some business logic. As we see here, either it will map, it will filter, it will change the objects, it will convert the objects based on your business requirements. This is the class which you basically know from your add service annotation. You know that this does exactly that. And if we go here, you can see that it inherits that component, and you can see in the case that an annotated class is a service, and this is defined by domain-driven design, and you can see that it basically is like a contract or something standardized for you and other developers. Hey, this class will also implement, it does some business logic and also implements or has the add component annotation. And it will be the same behavior. If I start this, it will also inject my person service and another person service in Mupolo. Now, when we are talking about controller, basically this is something different. And for now, if we go here, remember it's just the same. It's the same. It also inherits the add component. But if you see here, it's a web controller. And basically, when you put the add controller annotation, then you can use some extra annotations, but for now we can't use this because we don't have the web module dependency added. For now we are just using plain Spring Boot with the Spring Boot starter and only a standalone application. But this add controller will be useful when we will learn about the web module. But for now, what I want to tell you about this add controller, it has the same behavior as your add component annotation, but also it tells you as a developer that this class is responsible for communicating with the client. And we will see this when we develop web applications, but for now just remember add controller add repository and add service inherits the add component annotation and also adds the specific classes to the application context where it creates objects based on this annotation. So just all for now. And when we will discuss the web module, we will discuss about this add controller, the add rest controller, the add controller advice. Now in the next video, we will discuss this add configuration annotation.